Okay, and we're live here. I'm Kevin Van Dorn from Keto Mojo Go, and tonight we have live with us Brett Lloyd. He's a guitar player. He's a musician. He has some music out. I've noticed on his pinned on his Twitter feed. He's got his album for sale, so we'll have him talk about that as well. But so, how are you doing tonight, Brett?
Doing very well, sir. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your channel.
Yes, and it's a pleasure to meet you. So this is a lot of fun. I think this is at least for me, this is kind of coming out of the shell thing, just finding out all about this. And my wife and I are having a great time. And we, yeah. Oh, great. Can you see? You can see both of us. So great. My wife can see us both as we're doing this. So that's great to see.
Very good. Very good. We'll give her my best. I can't see her, but I can barely hear her.
She's sitting over there.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Yeah. So anyway, Brett, so go ahead and give us your story. Because I mean, I'm doing this because I want to uplift the guests. I'm just a nobody. And I want to bring these, low carb, high fat, keto, carnivore rock stars to the forefront. And so here you are, buddy. Go ahead and let's hear about your story.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story, because I believe the reason why I do these is because I think it's important that we share our success stories, that we give people the hope that we were craving when we were on our search. Right. So growing up, I grew up in a lower class, working class family in Huntington, West Virginia. My parents had an enormous vegetable garden, so I had fresh vegetables and potatoes year round. Be either picked and you strung green beans for a half an hour every evening while you watched the news. It was just a normal. Mom and dad were canning. We ate a ton of meat. It was not a vegetarian thing. And I was an athlete, so I probably got lucky that I didn't start suffering depression symptoms sooner than I did. With the advantage of hindsight, I can look back and with pretty good accuracy determine that I was about age 15 when I first started experiencing depression. But it wasn't anything overt that a teacher or another adult would pick up on.
Right. Were you on a pretty healthy diet there, or were you on a sad diet?
It was for its time. It was what we were taught. You had a balanced meal of meat, vegetables, grains, and the carb frankenfoods were just starting to creep in. And this was the late 60s, early 70s to the mid 70s. But I was basically meat and potatoes, and then whatever mom and dad served on the table, you ate it whether you wanted to or not, because that's just the way things were then. And then after I moved out on my own into my 20s, I ate what I wanted to, which was basically just meat and potatoes. I probably avoided more trouble because I didn't eat my vegetables like a good young man should. But in 1990, I was first diagnosed with major depression. In 1995, I started taking Prozac as prescribed. And this began what I call the wellness illness cycle and the gradual spiral downward. Because I would have periods of wellness followed by, maybe 6-8 months, things that go really well. And then there'd be 2 months, 3 months where mood would drop, energy would drop. I know now my brain fog increased greatly during those times. And I was not a sad, depressed person. I was a grumpy, angry, depressed person.
So what were you doing? What were you doing for a living during that time?
I was a full-time musician.
Okay.
I was kind of a late bloomer. I didn't get to own my first instrument until I was 18. And then I didn't really fully dedicate myself to it until I was about 25. But and then I started gigging around the age of 28. I worked in the mental health field prior to that. Matter of fact, my last real job in the field, I was running a group home for developmentally disabled, mentally retarded people who had been institutionalized most of their life. And this was at the very end when it was decided that it was better to let folks like that out and try to teach them how habilitation skills so that they could maybe function at a higher level and socialize in a safer environment. And the group home that I ran, it was mostly very profound, severe mental retardation with a lot of physical deformities and things like that. It was very exhausting work.
I can imagine.
But it was what I did. That my psychology experience later becomes both a blessing and a curse the sicker I got, because as anybody in the field will tell you, the worst person in the world to diagnose someone is yourself. Right. But I was a compliant somebody. I followed my doctor's orders. I took my medicine as prescribed. I followed the directions, and unfortunately I just got worse. 2006, things really got out of hand. We had some familial things that occurred that I suddenly found myself unable to sleep more than an hour a night. That became a severe problem. Anxiety joined the party. As in my experience with depression, anxiety is never far away. And if you have anxiety, depression is never very far away. They kind of walk hand in hand, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I for a while, actually for 15 years, I was on bupropion, right, for a little bit of depression. And you're right. I mean, one leads to the other, which then leads to the other. It's a vicious cycle. And then family things don't make it any better. Were you finding also that some of these medicines were probably helping you gain weight?
Oh, most definitely. Antidepressants, psychiatric medications in general are notorious for putting weight on people. I knew that going in. It was one of the things I didn't like about having to take the stuff. I even remember I was about 41, and I asked my doctor, I said, it's been a few years now. I've been taking Prozac, and geez, it would really be nice not to have to take this stuff anymore. Do you see a time where that might be possible? And I'll never forget. And this was a good guy. I mean, he was a good doctor and a good man. He tried really hard to help me. But he just said, I don't see it. You're probably going to have to take it the rest of your life. And I just remember that was the most horrible, up to that point, disturbing moment I'd ever had with a physician. Because, geez, I'm that broken. So 2007 through, into 2008, things got exponentially worse over time. And then they started mixing the drugs, making these cocktails where they would combine Wellbutrin or Effexor, Lexapro, Lamictal, Seroquel, Latuda, Symbyax, Risperidone. There's probably several more in there. Abilify. One day I'll actually sit down and concentrate on it and try to write it all out. It was ridiculous.
Right.
There's a picture on my Facebook page where you can see I had, at that time, a row of pills just across. And I'm like, is that a chemical romance or a nightmare? And none of it really worked for very long. That would be the pattern, is they would prescribe something new, and it might work for a little while. If it worked at all, I might get a few weeks or a few months reprieve out of what I was experiencing. And then the next crash would happen. And every time I would call it jumping back into the ditch, I would jump into a deeper ditch that became more difficult to crawl out of. And I want to describe for folks, because I think this is really important. One of the things I'm trying to figure out when these discussions in my head is how can we better communicate with the mentally ill? Mm-hmm. This is kind of my theory. I call it the guitar player's theory. Mm-hmm. When I was sick, my illness altered everything I saw, everything I heard, everything I touched, everything I felt. Every emotion was altered, nudged, changed, slightly, or in some cases greatly, by the illness. Case in point, my wife, for example, would say one morning, on the Sunday before Mass, "Oh, it's a beautiful day." My illness would nudge that and translate it into, "It's a really beautiful day.
Your internal voice, huh?
Or even more recently, just a few years ago, when Hurricane Matthew came through here, we're like 8 miles offshore here in Northeast Florida. And Hurricane Matthew got within 50 miles of shore. And we had a little bit of wind damage with a tree that had a limb going through part of our chain link fence. Well, when I surveyed the damage the day after, God is my witness, I would have sworn an oath before a judge and everything that fence was 10 to 12 feet off the ground. And I'm discussing the situation with my wife, and she doesn't seem that disturbed by it. But she keeps looking at me oddly. And it wasn't till the probably February of last year, and I went out and looked at it again, and so help me, the fence was only 1.5 feet off the ground. But my illness had it way exaggerated. And I mean, I looked at that stupid thing from every angle imaginable. It just, that's what the illness did to me. It changed everything I heard, and it never changed it for the better. It always changed it for the worse, or in a way that had a negative impact on me. And
your wife stuck by you this whole time.
She's definitely earned her place in heaven. I mean, she describes having to live on eggshells all that time because she never knew how I was going to react. She might say something benign, and I might react like appropriately, and then I might be, well, what do you mean? Because I would hear something completely different. And see, while this is happening, you're not aware of it. She wasn't aware of it. So even trying to communicate, I mean, here this woman I knew who adored me couldn't understand what I was trying to explain to her, which seemed very clear and simple to me. And for her, the vice versa is true. She knew I loved her.
Right.
But I wasn't getting what she was saying. So it was a very miserable time for both of us. Unfortunately, mental illness catches many people in its net. It's not just the sick person, it's the family members and friends in different situations. So it's one of the reasons why we get to the historical issues of the standard American diet and how we used to eat 150, 200 years ago. Depression and mental illness was rare.
Right.
It's not like it is now.
Did if you don't mind saying, did you get a diagnosis for what disorders you had, or? It grew over the years. It was major depression, and then major depression, anxiety disorder got added, and then insomnia was added. Then it escalated after 2010, then it started escalating into major depressive disorder with psychotic features. And then from 2013 to 2015, the different doctors and nurse practitioners I saw, well, none of the medicines were working, so maybe they got the diagnosis wrong. So then they tried bipolar 2 on me and tried to treat that, and it just got worse. Nobody ever maybe said borderline personality disorder or anything like that?
No, I never got that. Bipolar type 2 is as low as I climbed on the mental illness ladder.
Well, the only reason I asked that was we've got somebody in our family that's kind of going through some of those things, and we ended up seeing a therapist. And what she recommended, you mentioned Walking on Eggshells, she gave us that book to read, Walking on Eggshells, which was good for us because it helped us to understand the point of view that you're talking about. Not saying you got borderline, but there's a lot of a lot of overlap.
Oh yeah, well, mental illness, it's my belief based on my experience when I worked in the field, and now looking back with hindsight, with sane and clearing eyes, the inability to communicate, in my experience, seems to be quite common across most mental illnesses. Because
I find it kind of interesting. They said we didn't diagnose you correctly, and so we're going to give you a different drug. I don't think there's a one-to-one relationship for a drug to fix a particular mental illness. I just don't think that exists.
Well, I've come to understand or at least developed the opinion based on my experiences, that basically all these doctors are doing is swinging for the fences. The drug companies say, hey, this will work for that, try it.
Right.
And there's not any other tools in their tool shed other than the prescription pad, although now, fortunately, due to doctors like Sean Baker and Ken Berry and Georgia Eade and others, you know, they're Dr. Tro and I can't remember Dr. J in San Diego's last name, but he's part of that Dr. Tro.
Dr. J. Wrigley?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You know, there's more and more physicians who are coming online. But at that time, this is, you know, the 90s to early 2000s, there wasn't anything happening in that regard. In fact, this is really ironic. In 2009, December 2008, January 2009, I started to get better, and I thought it was because I had come to peace with those familial events, things that had happened that had preceded and contributed to my breakdown. And because I had gained so much weight on some of those meds that I'd been on, specifically Symbiax at the time, I gained a lot of weight, and I didn't like being that big.
Right.
So I decided to go on the Atkins diet. And I followed it as closely as I understood it, and weight started coming off. Well, I also started feeling better. And from 2009 through this July of 2010, I was as well. I got to go to my 30-year high school reunion. There's pictures of me. I had a blast. The only medicine I was taking then was Prozac, and I was still taking Ativan. I forgot to mention Ativan. That's what they gave me for anxiety. I was on that for 8 years. That took me almost a whole year to titrate off of.
Right.
And even then, the day after I took the last dose, I woke up with vertigo that didn't go away for 3 months. So Ativan, benzodiazepines, nasty stuff. Anyway, so I had this really great year, and my wife and I did not make the connection that the diet had anything to do with it.
Right.
And because it was in the traditional sense of diet, after I lost so much weight, well, I started eating what I wanted to again. Anyway, sometime in July of 2010, I'm at Mass on a Sunday night by myself, happy as I can be, in the middle of prayer right before communion, and suddenly a red alert literally goes off of my brain. I get the notion if I don't get home really soon, something very bad is going to happen. And I mean, very uncharacteristic to me to leave Mass for any reason before it's over with. But I literally ran out of that church, hopped on my bike, rode home, all the while just getting more and more anxious, not understanding what's going on. And 15 minutes later, I'm curled up on the couch in our living room, bawling my head off, and have no reason, no idea why.
Right.
And that began the worst, the last 5 years of the worst part of the illness, because then it was just a spiral downward with only minor breaks when meds would be changed. I gained an enormous amount of weight. I was very angry all the time. I literally stopped going anywhere. I didn't go to church. I felt like I was too angry to be at church. That was my sickness telling me that. And basically I sat in this chair in front of a computer and wrote songs about depression and recorded them, and occasionally released albums during that 5-year period. Fast forward all the way to January 2015. I'm weighing around 289 pounds. I hope you can still, okay, the screen's flashing. I want to make sure.
Yeah, I locked up on my end. It just kind of froze. But
anyway,
go ahead.
2015, I weighed 289. My psychiatrist was telling me that I should seriously consider electroshock therapy and or a long-term hospitalization. neither of which was going to happen because I didn't have health insurance for the hospitalization. And I had observed patients after they'd had electroshock, and there wasn't nobody going to do that to me.
Yeah, that's basically a reboot, right?
That wasn't going to happen to me.
Right. Yeah.
But I was, and then he changed my medicines in a way that was really harmful. He had me go off Prozac cold turkey, swearing up and down, "Oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine." Well, it was a nightmare. Imagine, if you can, what it would feel like if somebody rubbed a warm washcloth directly onto your brain. That's what that felt like for weeks. So in the middle of all this, I'm still somehow managing to write and record music. And I have a lady who sings the lead vocals on my Dark Hearts Blues project. And she's observing a lot of this, and I'm not doing a good job of communicating it to her except through the songs we're doing. And finally, one day she says, "Have you ever thought about or looked into medical cannabis before?" I was like, "No." I mean, I'd had a bad experience with it when I was young. So I was the guy at band practices and gigs and whatnot. I was the dude passing it left and right because I wasn't interested.
Right.
It wasn't my thing, and beer was legal. But I did a little research and saw that there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that people were doing better with it. And my wife and I talked about it. And we were like, at this point, what do we have to lose? What could go wrong? You know, what else? What else can happen? Because she was seriously looking at herself to thinking, you know, I don't know how much longer he can manage this. And in all honesty, I didn't think I'd live to be 60 at that point. Because I knew, you know, mental illness shortens people's lives. Then you add the obesity to it and all the meds. It was just a bad scene. So we secured 4 grams of flour. My wife found a recipe and made canna butter with it. And she made these little quarter-sized oatmeal cookies with raisins in them. Probably be considered keto because there was no sugar. Maybe. I'm not sure exactly what defines a keto snack or not completely.
Well, probably not the oatmeal, but anyway, yeah.
very, very low carb. But I was so paranoid and afraid of having a bad experience, I would only eat half of one. And I ate the first half, and 10 minutes, 15 minutes after I ate it, I felt like 1,000 suns had lifted off of my body. I wasn't high. I wasn't intoxicated. I felt good. Or I felt normal, maybe.
Felt normal, right, yeah.
I didn't feel horrible for the first time, and I couldn't remember. Then about 45 minutes later, a light high kicked in, and I got to smile. It treated all my symptoms. It didn't eliminate them. It treated them. It treated them better than any pill I had ever taken. So every day that became the routine. A half a cookie, and then later on, you know, a full cookie. About 10 days into that, I mean, my wife, she doesn't know what to think because I'm not reacting the same way to things that she would say to me. I was reacting more normally, and she was confused. And then one morning I'm getting dressed and I'm putting my shoes on, and suddenly I realize my belly's in the way and I'm having trouble getting my breath. I'm like, well, who let this happen? I mean, I knew it was big, but I didn't know to the extent how big I was because my illness had been lying to me. And I took the first honest look at my body that I'd taken in years, and I was like, this is unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And so I told my wife, Danielle, that night, I said, I'm going back on Atkins right now. And so I did. And then I started gradually walking the dog, half a block here, a block there, because I had no stamina. All I had was mass and illness. That was it. But over the course of 3.5 years, I walked 94 pounds off of my fat self. Most of it the last year and a half of that 3.5 years, because there was a year there, 2016, that became the year of the great white chocolate binge. there were some dollar stores. I always loved white chocolate. And suddenly it was cheap and affordable. And I had to eat. I was on a mission to eat it all. And my blood sugar got up. And my doctor said, your blood pressure's up. Yeah, you've lost some weight, but you probably should go on a statin and change your diet to a bland diabetic, pre-diabetic type kind of thing, or otherwise it's going to get worse. As soon as he said statins, another alarm went off in my head and said, do not accept that. Yeah. And I looked at him and I said, I'll tell you what, give me 6 months. We'll do the blood test again because I'm going to change this with exercise and diet. Because I knew I hadn't really been following things as closely as I should. Man looked me straight in the eye and he said, 90% of people cannot change your numbers through diet and exercise.
Right.
And worst thing in the world, well, the best thing he could say to me was that, because that automatically meant that come hell or high water, I was going to die trying.
Right. Right.
And so I eliminated all sugar. I used to drink tea, a gallon of tea every day, but my wife said it was the most unsweetened, sweetened tea you could ever put in your mouth. Because I would put like maybe a quarter cup of sugar in for every gallon.
Right.
I eliminated that. On the medicine front, by the end of 2015, I was off all antidepressants. By the end of 2016, I was off the Ativan. By the end of 2017, I was off the insomnia meds. I was doing okay. I was feeling better. I was seeing the possibility that I might actually lose 100 pounds. But I'm still dependent on cannabis. Even though it's legal here in Florida, and I'm a legal medical marijuana patient, it's expensive. It's a pain in the neck to maintain your legal status. It's just not optimal.
Right.
And in May of 2018, the same lady who recommended I look into medical cannabis messages me and says, oh my gosh, you've got to go watch every video this man has. It was one Dr. Jordan Peterson. So I'm like, what in the world? So I go and watch a couple of his lectures and a couple of his talks, and I'm like, geez, this guy's saying things I've been feeling for years but couldn't articulate.
Right.
And I developed a great respect and consider him a man of great honesty and integrity. So with that said, I just happened one day to be looking for new videos of his to see, and I came across a 30-minute cutout of him being on Joe Rogan.
Right.
Where he talks about how his daughter healed herself of her arthritis and depression by eating beef and drinking water. And then he described how his depression had been eliminated. I didn't even know he was depressed.
Right.
Which is more credit to him that he could give all those dynamic lectures under all that pressure, especially after his media storm hit. And he's suffering mental illness. Oh my gosh. Superman. Not really, but it just astounded me he was able to do that. But my jaw's on the floor. I'm watching this man who I respect and believe has great integrity describe how he cured himself by eating meat and drinking water. And about how his anxiety is like 80% better than it's ever been in his life. So,
and also how sensitive he's found himself to certain foods too.
Well, yeah, we know about that now. Know about that firsthand myself from watching. My wife's a month behind me in carnivory. And she's played around closer to the edges, and I won't ever do anything but eat meat and drink water because it's not worth the risk to me.
Right.
But anyway, so after seeing the Jordan Peterson thing, and then I start searching the carnivore diet, and I run across Sean Baker's episode. And I must have watched that 50 times, the dietary part of it. Because at this point, I'm looking for flaws in logic. I'm looking for errors because this is just looking too good to be true. This can't be happening. Why would I have suffered all these years if this was a possibility? Why didn't some doctor tell me about this? That was what I was thinking. And then I discovered a talk that Amber O'Hearn gave at Keto Fest in 2016 when she described, you know, I didn't know what a cecum was, let alone the relevance to all of this. Right. And she explained in very plain English that a guitar player could understand how millions of years ago we evolved separate from gorillas, the simian species, let's say, and grew our large energy demanding brains and larger bones, and how we became the species we are today by eating meat for 3.5 million years. And suddenly it was like there was enough pieces of the puzzle put together for me to go, I have to do this. I can't not try this. I have to do it. So July 16th, 2018 was my first day as a facultative carnivore.
See, that's great. Yeah, that is about, I say we started, you know, officially doing keto in August of 2018. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of parallel paths there as far as our time. And we've found ourselves migrating more and more towards carnivore. We're still not fully carnivore, but we definitely, I would say we probably are carnivore 4 days a week, and we'll really carb cycle and eat a vegetable 3 days a week.
Well, so, hey, what's working for you? So I'm never going to be a zealot. I'm always about, this is what works for me. Because, you know, if somebody told me, you know, eat 3 pebbles a day, you'll feel better. At that point, I probably would have tried it. I would have been, okay, give me a picture of the pebble to look for. Because you get to, you're so desperate, because, I mean, it was horrible. I mean, I'm thinking about suicide more than I knew not to let on about it, because if I did, then I would have had control of my life taken away, and I'd probably be set somewhere in an institution to this very day.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But thanks be to God, that's not what happened. And so July 16th of 2018, I started my carnivorous journey. Around the 10 to 14 day mark, I woke up and I didn't have joint pain. Mm-hmm. Now, I never thought I had joint pain. I thought I called it aches and pains, which I assumed was just what you had from surviving 57 years.
Right.
Nothing special. It wasn't like I was in agony or anything, but when you wake up without it, it gets your attention. I'm at this point in time, I'm taking walks at 6 in the morning, and I'm literally catching myself skipping like a kid down the sidewalk. Thankfully, it was dark and nobody could see me. I was like, geez, you got to stop acting like this. Somebody's going to think you're nuts. Wouldn't that be ironic if you got in trouble for having too much fun, looking like a crazy man when you were just feeling good?
Yeah, hey, I hear you. I mean, that was one of the things that we found as well, was a few weeks into our keto journey, which, you know, we were a little bit more traditional keto at that point, mm-hmm. that autoimmune systems disappeared. And, you know, I've got 3 of them, and was just amazed. And that's when I started looking into it. I kind of doing some searching, like, are any other people seeing benefits? And, you know, sure enough, which then eventually, I think in December, I went ahead and started the Keto for Autoimmune Diseases group as a result, mm-hmm. because, hey, I'm having so much improvement. Let's get some other people in here. And of course, you always get some pushback from folks saying, no, it's impossible to prove, whatever. It's not going to be done by diet. And, you know, I say, you know, if nothing else, just say it doesn't. Let's just say it doesn't help your autoimmune symptoms. If it reverses your type 2 diabetes, if you are able to lose the weight, isn't it worth, you know, just doing it for that reason? And it's icing on the cake. But really, if you think about it, as we've learned, say, from Ivor Cummings and these people, that we've kind of had the cart before the horse. Mm-hmm, exactly. The inflammation is the beginning of all this stuff, right? And so the inflammation from eating the high carb foods, the seed oils, the grains, is what starts this whole cycle in the first place. You get the inflammation, then you get the inflated blood sugar, then you get joint pain, etc., depression, all of these things as it goes on. But as we find out, even if you didn't help your autoimmune, you've helped so many other things, right? And so it's such an easy pushback on people.
Well, I'll get to that point here. I'll come back around to what your point you just made, because some of it to me is rather astonishing what I've observed, and then some of it's kind of funny to me. The cognitive dissonance. But on days 23 into day 24, I felt my depression symptoms vanish one by one. The morning of the 24th, when I got up, it was like something out of me. I literally leaped out of the bed, smiling before my feet hit the floor. That walk that morning, it was one of the most joyful experiences. It was joyful. Just in and of itself, I had a joyful experience. I hadn't had a joyful experience in years. But the symptoms are gone, and they haven't been back. It's every bit of it's gone. Now, the anxiety took about 5 months to finally kick completely to the curb. And the insomnia is pretty much gone. I'll have one night, maybe 2 a week, where I only get 5 hours of sleep, maybe 4. That's usually weather related. It's too hot, it's too cold, maybe something happened at work, but it's not illness related. And I'm having many nights where I'm getting 7 and 8 hours in, which, geez, I spent in the height of my sickness days in the early 2000s. I went on 2 separate 2-month occasions without sleeping more than an hour a night.
Right.
And then they changed meds, put me on this drug called Remeron. I slept for a couple of weeks, and then it started all over again. And let me tell you, when you don't sleep, bad things start to happen. You might start hearing kids playing in the yard when there's no kids in the yard, kind of stuff. So that's where I came from, to happiness, joy, excitement. I actually, I went from thinking I'm not going to live to see 60, and I turned 58 next Wednesday. Send in your birthday money, people. Anyway, and now I'm like, I not just think I'll make it to 60. I'm looking, my wife and I are making plans for the future. Whereas it was, can we just survive this day or this week?
Right. Yeah.
All because I changed my diet. I no longer am inflamed. I'm no longer a sugar addict. I'm not a carboholic. I'm not a slave to my taste buds.
Right. So are you completely off all your mental illness medications now?
I haven't taken a pharmaceutical medication since the end of 2017.
Nice.
Yeah, and that includes, through that 3.5 year period, I'd been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And I kicked that to the curb right before. I'd already kicked that to the curb, low carb keto, before I went full carnivore.
Right.
Just completely, So it's really been an amazing thing. I'm such a fortunate and blessed man that I learned about this in time, because maybe I would have survived another year or 2 without the cannabis, probably not. But even with the cannabis, it would be like, you've seen this, where people, they hit stalls, or they can't get to the goal. The goal is to feel this good, but they just can't get past this. Well, that's where I was. I couldn't get to where I needed to be until carnivory happened.
Right.
And that's why I promoted. And because of my success, this is the number one reason why I do these, because I'll be honest, I don't like going down memory lane through some of those old streets of memories, because it's not a lot of fun to remember those times. But 2 months into my carnivorous journey, a lady that I'd grown up in the same community, her brother and I had played sports together. Her mother and my mother grew up together. She contacted me and said I was diagnosed. She was diagnosed with primary progressive multiple sclerosis. Her doctor told her to count on spending most of the rest of her life in a wheelchair. She was desperate to learn about carnivory because she'd seen some of the posts I was making on Facebook about it. And so I explained it to her, and I gave her the links to meatheals.com, which is like, it's where I send everybody. I send everybody to meatheals.com. I send them to michaelapeterson.com. And then if you're curious, I send them to the Facebook group Zeroing In on Health. Right. Because that's where you've got 10 and 20-year veterans of this way of living residing and helping people. And they've got a vast amount of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So 2 months into her experience, she's telling me she's losing symptoms. And I was completely unaware of the symptoms related to multiple sclerosis until she started sharing. She told me, well, I stopped falling down.
Right.
Oh my gosh, how horrible is that? She said the screaming, loud ringing in her ear went away. I'm like, so tinnitus can get screaming loud. I didn't, I knew it was a real problem for many people, but screaming loud, I'd never heard of that before. 4 months into her experience, she's symptom free. Mm-hmm. She fired her doctor. I don't know if she's found a new one, but she made a big point of letting me know she fired him. And she's happy and enjoying her life again.
Right. You're familiar with Dr. Terry Walls?
I can't say I've heard that name. I'm sorry.
All right. So she is a doctor, and she, I think, a physical, not a medical doctor, but she has a doctorate. Mm-hmm. And she was diagnosed and was in a wheelchair with multiple sclerosis for 4 years. And she, sorry, I got the dog out here squeaking a toy.
Right. I understand. I have critters too. I got cats asleep in the floor behind me, thankfully.
But anyway, she, she started a paleo diet essentially, mm-hmm. and a little bit different than what we're doing, a little bit more vegetable based. But she was able to turn around her multiple sclerosis. And matter of fact, she has a thing called the Terry Walls protocol, which is really very popular on Facebook and everywhere, where she's helping a lot of people. So, but whether it's carnivory, paleo, keto, it doesn't matter. It's the change in diet. It's getting away from the standard American diet that's doing it. Now, she can tolerate vegetables, obviously, because she's eating a lot. I can tolerate some, but, and my wife can tolerate less. So we just have to be very, we find out what bothers us, what doesn't. And in your case, you went and cut it all out, and you seem to be doing fine. Dr. Sean Baker is probably the most tested individual in history, and he's testing himself all the time. Sees that he's not having any issues. Same thing with Michaela Peterson, right? It's our responsibility too, right, to keep monitoring ourselves, right? So if we start to see something go south or something get out of tolerance, well, we can make adjustments as we need to. We're adults; we can do that.
I haven't experienced a negative aspect to this yet.
Oh, I hear you.
I mean, because I was so low carb when I started, my adaptation was
easy,
a breeze. Becoming fat adapted it took about 5 months total to be completely fat adapted.
Right.
But it wasn't, the most uncomfortable, if I would even call it uncomfortable, because it was I didn't have diarrhea. I had loose stool, which is for the healing. I'd put up with loose stool for the rest of my days to not be depressed.
Right.
And to not ever be that kind of anxious or to not be unable to sleep again,
Wait, would you put up with keto crotch? Just asking.
Yes, I would. I wouldn't go through the surgery required to make it happen, but I would put up with it if I got it. But that's a whole different can of worms. I could wax eloquent on for some time. But that article came out the day after we've learned that Weight Watchers is losing millions of dollars because nobody wants to restrict their diet and starve themselves anymore.
I think it's billions of dollars, actually.
Oh, billions. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And not to mention the billions of dollars on the products they were pushing that were tied into Weight Watchers that nobody's buying. because it doesn't work. Anyway,
works temporarily. It works for a while.
Well, until you get hungry enough, or until the body starts breaking down, and you're like, okay, I better eat something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's just been. Another dear friend of mine calls me, has been treating his type 2 diabetes diligently. Gave up sugar years ago. He's not messing around with it. But it was getting away from him. His doctor said, your numbers are getting worse. We're going to have to start adding medicine, maybe consider injections.
Mm-hmm.
So this person calls me and explains all this. And my normal recommendation for anybody coming straight from SAD or something close to SAD is to do low carb, high fat for 30 days, because otherwise the adaptations seems to be really hard.
Yeah, it's monstrous. It's monstrous for a lot of people, no doubt.
And this person's like, no, I'm doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
And
everybody, it happens with everybody I talk to too. Like, you really ought to ease into this. Nah, we're going right for it.
He recognized that he was in near jeopardy, I believe. Mm-hmm. But 5 or 6 days into it, I get a message, and it's like, my blood sugar's down 30 points already, and I've lost 8 pounds.
Mm.
So already this person's experiencing and had a tremor in one of his extremities that he'd had for a long time. Well, about the 4th or 5th day, that went away.
Right.
So this person's another person on the road to healing, mm-hmm. purely and found out about it inadvertently through me, because I was talking about it on Facebook, which kind of comes full circle to why, I learned of it from Jordan Peterson.
Right.
Our stories matter. We need to be sharing our stories, whether it's with keto, paleo, carnivore, whatever, because there's people desperate for hope who are just hanging by a thread. And I'll never forget what that was like. I'll never forget what it was like to be so desperate that you would just, anything, give me something to cling to. So that's why I do these. And that's why I encourage everybody out there who sees this. If you've got a health story, you've recovered, you've lost weight, you've recovered from whatever it was, share it.
Right.
In a way that suits your talents.
Right. And that's why I'm doing this as well, right? Because I'm finding myself hooking up with other people that are have great stories. And sometimes I feel like I share mine all the time. So it's good that, to get other people on our channel, on our Facebook groups, to see other people besides me, because I feel like, well, okay, you see my results and I keep talking about it over and over again. Mm-hmm. I've got to be getting boring. So it's good to bring other people in that are, having similar experiences, maybe not identical experiences. I mean, the results are the same, right? But sometimes you have to go a little further, right? So sometimes some people can do it by going paleo. They can all natural foods, and maybe they can eat a little sugar. Other people need to go, low carb. And that's kind of, we call ourselves keto, and that's one of the things we started off with, but then we ended up adopting Dr. Eric Westman's protocol, which is more low carb. He's an Atkins guy, right? Mm-hmm. He actually even worked with Dr. Atkins some. And so in his mind, in his protocol, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, is just to eat fatty meats and vegetables, maybe vegetables, but fatty meats for sure, until you're full, and then don't eat when you're not hungry. That's his whole protocol, staying under 20 carbs. I mean, that's it. And so by doing that, it's almost carnivory, right?
It's very close. It's very close. It's a good low carb ketogenic diet. I mean, for me, see, I was after the healing. I'd already lost a bunch of weight. I lost how many more pounds? I can't remember. It's like 17, 18. I ended up losing total 116 pounds from when I was 289. And then I got down all the way to 173. By the second month of carnivory, that's where I was.
Right.
Now, because of resistance training and the fact that my body's rebuilding itself, I feel like I'm being rewritten and rebuilt from the inside out, even now, 7 months into the experience. because I poisoned myself for the better part of 57 years. That's one thing I want to convey to everybody. You got to be patient. You're not going to get the results you want. I remember Michaela Peterson described after 2 weeks, her depression symptoms were gone. Right. So let me tell you, on day 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, I was a little peaked because I was like, why is this taking? Hers was done.
She's a lot younger than you.
But well, she's like, I worked that out in my head, and the results came. And that's the point I want to make. We all heal at different rates. It depends on how sick you are when you start this, how long you've been poisoning yourself, how inflamed you are at the time. Just be patient. Your body knows what it's doing way better than we'll ever be able to fully understand. Right. If we give it the proper nutrition and don't put toxins into it, gosh, we can come back from just about anything up to a point. And I think that thought's lost on people, that healing is even, how can I be healed?
Right. Well, and there's other factors too. Like you were mentioning, you were on a lot of medications which were causing you to gain weight. There's a lot of folks that are, starting out on keto, and I've got some good friends that are on, 3 or 4 different diabetic medications, and they're on anti-depression medications and everything else. They actually are blockers from losing the weight. Now they're still going to, their blood sugar is going to probably get better, and they're going to have to reduce these things. But as a result, they are not going to lose weight as quickly as other people are. In my case, like you mentioned, my autoimmune systems got better. As a matter of fact, I got really sick taking Humira, which had never happened before, right? I mean, I've been taking Humira for 15 years, and it never bothered me. But then all of a sudden, I kept getting upper respiratory infections. So I had to stop taking it. When I stopped taking it, all of a sudden my weight loss really, really took off, right? Because that's one of the things that was holding me back. Well, other people don't necessarily have that luxury that they can just get off their meds. I mean, I didn't just get off it. I called my doctor and said, "Hey, I'm having this. Is it okay?" And she said, "Yeah, that's fine. Well, you can pick it back up later." Well, I never needed it again, and so that was fine. So I was able to accelerate my weight loss. But a lot of people aren't able to do that right away because they're on this cocktail of medicines that's going to hold them up. But I think it was Dr. Tro today who put up an article, and I reposted it on Facebook, about there's a peer-reviewed study. We're saying that even if you're not losing weight, your glycogen in your liver, your fatty liver, is getting better. So that's kind of that encouragement I'm putting out there for folks, is that just because the scale's not moving, all right, there's other things in your health that matter, right? And then you got to work with your doctor, right? See what's going on, and then things that you can try. Maybe there's some people that they do a little bit more fasting. I don't want to do that myself because I like to eat, but carnivory is another option, right? And so the protocol that we're using, which really, I mean, again, Dr. Weston's saying is like leafy vegetables is 2 cups a day, non-starchy is 1 cup a day. You can just drop those off quite easily, right? And some people don't react well to dairy, for example, so maybe they can drop that. But there's little incremental changes that you can make to see if maybe that helps you get down the road you're looking for. And it's really not so hard if you have a path of elimination.
Well, my observations in my 7 months of doing this, I've seen, because I literally lived at zeroing in on health there for the first 45, 60 days, because there's so much stored knowledge there that it's literally like getting a degree if you read it all. I encourage everybody, even if you're not looking to try zero carb life or carnivory, but you're interested in the subject, it's very interesting, and they'll be happy to let you into the group. It's a private group. You have to answer some questions. But
is that Phil Escott's group?
That's Charles Washington's group.
Oh, Washington, okay.
And that's where I got to read the Stephenson's book, The Fat, Not by Bread Alone, The Fat of the Land, and learned about how the Northern Eskimos and whatnot, how they thrive in an environment where no vegetable ever grows. year round, and all they do is eat meat and blubber. Right. And live very long, as long as they don't die by misadventure, which living up there, happens a lot. Mm-hmm. But it was fascinating. And just the difference in attitudes about how food was approached and how meat was approached was just so completely different, because they didn't have the frankenfoods then that we have now.
Right.
Just a really huge volume of information there for folks who are interested in this stuff. And if you want to try carnivory, you really need to go read that. One thing I've noticed, though, stumbling blocks, even on carnivory, it seems keto, carnivory, low carb, high fat, dairy seems to be a universal problem for a lot of people. Their weight loss, they hit a stall, or they can't get rid of some inflammation until they ditch the dairy.
Right.
My wife, like I said, is a month behind me. She had arthritis in her shoulders and in her hands. Well, the arthritis in her shoulders is gone. And her hands, the discoloration that was from inflammation is almost completely gone, and she's almost completely pain-free. Mm-hmm. But she's lost 28 pounds, I think. Took a picture of her, posted it on Twitter the other day. Nobody believed that she's 60 years old, because she sure doesn't look like it. This is something about carnivores. I could say this with all honesty. Somewhere 6 months and later, something happens to our skin. It becomes so much healthier, and we radiate health. Mm-hmm. There are people who've been living this way for 10 years. Those are the ones you really don't look at me for that, because I'm still old and goofy looking. Mm-hmm. But look for people like Kelly Hogan, Amber O'Hearn's a classic case. Sean Baker radiates Michaela Peterson just radiates this healthiness that you don't see when you're walking through the grocery store at Walmart or wherever you shop. You don't see that kind of healthiness. So it stands out to me profoundly.
I'll say, this last weekend we went to the Tampa Adapt event, the Keto event. Mm-hmm. And first thing I noticed was the percentage of obese people was much lower than Walmart, for example. It's just because you've got a lot of veterans of low carb living in that crowd, right? And so it was kind of like the people that were obese really stood out more than usual. But that's just kind of what happens, right? As you start adopting a low carb lifestyle, it's going to happen. You're going to start going down the path. You're going to look healthier. You're going to be healthier. And that's what we're hoping for, right? That's what we're hoping for the rest of the world. That's really all we want, right? That's really what we want. People to be healthy. We want people to live longer. We don't want people to have type 2 diabetes. I mean, and as you know, as we both do, we kind of live out there in the Twitter world, and we get, barraged by, skeptics, let's just say.
Very diplomatically said, sir.
But and what it is, it's always complaining. No, you're going to die. It doesn't matter if we go ahead and like if I post my actual medical records out there, where my doctor said I'm in remission from ankylosing spondylitis. I was type 2 diabetic. I'm not on no medicines. I'm not on no autoimmune medicines. I'm not on any blood pressure medicines. Mm-hmm. It's still, you talk about cognitive dissonance. That's where it is.
My favorite line is, how can you be so healthy eating such an unhealthy diet? And I'm like, well, there's your first fallacy, because if it was an unhealthy diet, I wouldn't be this healthy.
Right.
I'd be a mess.
Right.
Well, that's what happens when you let ideology overcome reality.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's true. I mean, we just want people to be healthy.
I don't care if you're a vegetarian, if you're a vegan, and you're happy and you're thriving, God bless you.
Sure.
It's none of my business. Mm-hmm. But when you start trying to tell me how I have to eat because otherwise the world's going to come to an end, it's not sustainable. Don't lie to me about that's ideology. That's propaganda. I'm about health, real health. Do you feel like you should feel? Are you well? Mm-hmm. Are you happy? Are you physically able to experience happiness? That's what matters.
Right. Well, as you know, they'll lie for one thing because they want to push their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
But also, people don't necessarily know they aren't feeling well.
That's true.
You know, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I felt pretty good for what I did. So, and I didn't correlate it until, I actually made the change. Then I'm like, well, I feel a lot better. I had no idea. And that happens with so many people. And I can remember my brother talking about it. He did Atkins back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And he lost a whole bunch of weight, was working out real strong until his doctor told him it was going to kill him. And then he stopped and he gained a whole bunch of weight back and the whole thing. But those are the voices that we hear outside. Unfortunately, those voices are starting to change their tune.
Well, they can't. Our stories cannot be denied. Our experiences cannot be denied. And I'm not picking on vegans here, so don't be sending me hate mail. I don't care what you do. I'm not going to bother you. Don't bother me. We'll get along. Or if you want to talk to me like a person and not like some accusatory judge and jury, I'm happy to exchange information and experiences with you.
Right.
But
hey, I offered to be on a podcast and a vegan doctor the other day, and he didn't accept it.
Well, here's the thing. People like you and me, our stories, their ideology cannot explain.
Right.
My link to the Carnivore Cast episode that I was blessed to be a part of is the greatest repellent I've ever seen for that. Mm-hmm. Because when they come at me, I say, okay, here's what I've done, and here's what I've lost, and how I lost it. And if you want to know more, you can go listen here.
Right. And I've offered that vegan doctor back on. I said I would be glad to interview you and talk to you, but he didn't want to do that either. So yeah, that's okay.
They don't want to talk to me because I defy their ideology, and everybody who through some low carb way of eating who does so defies their ideology, and they can't explain it. They can't handle it.
Well, also, believe it or not, they really aren't about human health, right?
No, so, it's an extreme anti-human philosophy that is political in nature and is a whole different thing that I don't really get into very much because I want to focus on, hey, have you been a compliant patient and you're not getting better?
Right.
And you're in your 50s and you're like, I don't want to die tomorrow, I want to feel better. Well, here's an alternative that's worthy of your consideration.
Right. I'm with you 100%. And one thing I would have might be more of a challenge is going the right to carnivore, right? Because it seems extreme for a lot of people, right? So that's why my path and my message usually is no sugar, no grain. I don't even say keto, right? Mm-hmm. I get off the sugars and the grains, and don't even necessarily go in the realm of, I never talk macros for one thing. I'm not a macro guy, right? I'm a keep the carbs low and no sugar, no grain, and eat real foods, right? If you eat real food, and then again, that we have a lot of correlation with the vegetarians there, right? I mean, most vegetarians are also against this junk food, right?
Sure.
None of us want that. If people get better eating that way and they don't want to eat meat, I'm good with it as long as it helps them. However, if it doesn't work for them, then there's always one more thing to try. Try doing it this way. If this, in my case, if all of a sudden, meat started bothering me, fine, I would do something else. And that's really the most important part of this is you are your own advocate for your own health. But you also have to be honest with yourself, right? You can't let other voices tell you that, well, if you're eating meat, it's unsustainable. The only thing that matters to be sustainable is human health, right? I mean, that's got to be first, because if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of the planet. So,
well, here's you're so right. And it's really remarkable to me how the cognitive dissonance. I mean, I've got friends, people that I know, good people, they don't have an ill bone in their body. I've known them my entire life. One lady, I've known her since we were 13 years old. And she told me she hasn't experienced me in person yet since So to them, these people that haven't experienced being a person, they haven't seen the same normal, happy, healthy Brett. They're only getting the online version. So a lot of them I know are like, oh, he's going off the deep end again. And then this dear friend of mine, she's like, well, that's just too extreme. You look too thin, you don't look healthy. And I'm like, I feel amazing.
Right.
And it's no wonder I looked as thin as I was, because the fat is off of me. And this is what was left after 20, 30 years of no physical activity. Mm-hmm. It's good that I look like that, because if otherwise, it probably would have been even worse. Mm. So you'll see me use the word extreme in quotation marks. Mm. That's why I do that. That's my, hey, this is so extreme. Look at Sean Baker.
Right.
He just won the world championship at the age of 52 rowing, beating people in class age groups much younger than him. Mm-hmm. I think there was only one other person that beat him overall time-wise. I think it was somebody, I can't remember what class they were in, but he beat pretty much everybody there total. Mm-hmm. And it's not just him, it's the Michaelas, the people like yourself, others. We're defying the norm.
Right.
We're proving the fallacy of the SAD diet. And we're not doing it because we're rebels. We're doing it because we didn't want to die.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that simple. I didn't want to die in my 50s.
Right.
Who does? You know, there's life to be lived. Let's live it and live it as joyfully as possible.
Right. And we don't want to see our family members around us die either. I mean, that's
exactly. Or our friends. Mm-hmm. Right. And I know of people who would be helped by eating, who desperately need to go on low carb, if nothing else, but who I believe would seriously benefit from carnivory.
Yeah.
Who probably never will, because of what you said, that it's so extreme. But let me break this down for people who don't know what this is about. Carnivory is the ultimate liberation diet, because you eat meat, you drink water. Food no longer is an obsession.
Right.
When I eat my dinner or my whatever meal it is, I only eat it when I'm hungry. When I'm hungry, I eat until I'm not another bite full. Thanksgiving, not another bite full. I do that every meal for every day. And I enjoy every bite of every meal every day, without exception. It's like you all had your little your gathering. Well, it doesn't sound like it was a little gathering. It sounds like it was a big gathering of keto folks. Well, a week ago tonight, I got my wife and I and a friend. We got to go to our first meetup, MEAT up, and got to eat and feast with 9 other carnivores. And so I got to ask a lot of these questions. You know, is every meal that you eat, every bite, that good for you? Because I thought I was just being weird.
Right.
No, it's universal amongst. And you don't want anything else. I call walking through the grocery store, walking down the aisles of death now on our way to the meat department. And I just see all this stuff that I used to just love, and all I can think of is it's poison.
Right.
I used to be in love with poison. Mm. And people, oh, it's so extreme, it's so restrictive. No, it's not. I mean, if you've never been free of sugar cravings before, give up sugar and then get back to me about how restrictive that is.
Yeah, people can't imagine doing that. I mean, I couldn't have before either, right? I mean, that's just reality. I mean, we are such addicts that it's unfathomable, right, to most people until you do it.
When I was mentally ill, the only time I really felt good, and it was a pseudo good, was when I was feeding my face with ice cream or coconut cakes or whatever my junk of the moment was.
Right.
That I wanted. That was the only time I really felt anything remotely less than horrible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's a learned habit.
Sure.
But
the cycle.
10 days into carnivory, my sugar cravings, all of them, gone.
Yeah.
I haven't been back since. Have not had one. Have not seen anything that I'm like, oh, man, I really miss that. Oh, I miss pizza. I miss hot dog. No, I don't miss any of it.
Right. Right. I know exactly where you're coming from. I mean,
freedom.
Yeah. And I just had a business trip last week, gone for 3 days, and it really wasn't that big a deal, even though my customer is a resort, right now. And so every meeting, every meal, everything was just like pastries and donuts and everything else in your face, breads and everything else. It really wasn't a big deal to me. I just ate, I'll order the New York strip. I'm good. And ate till I'm full. And people like, oh, matter of fact, here's one of my favorite stories. We were at a restaurant. It was a Roadhouse Grill, right? Logan's Roadhouse. I'm sorry, Logan's Roadhouse. And so we're sitting down with a colleague of mine, and I order, he says, I'm going to order the chicken Caesar salad. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to get the New York strip and some broccoli. And he looked at it and he goes, wait a minute. Your New York strip has 550 calories. My chicken Caesar salad has 1,100 calories. I'm getting the steak too. So, I mean, once people, examine it and see what it is, it really is a no-brainer, right? I mean,
it's a classic no-brainer. And here's some things that people don't realize because we were never taught this. Our small intestine absorbs all the nutrients in meat.
Right.
If somebody's had a colonoscopy, it's easy to learn this. You feed them meat and you see what comes out is in the bag. And the only thing that comes out is a tiny little bit of fluid and a very little bit of matter.
Right.
Because your body absorbs it all. Naturally. No additives, no supplements required. You just eat the meat. And we found that if you don't consume carbohydrates, you don't need vitamin C. There's trace amounts of vitamin C in meat, fresh meat. It's got to be fresh, not dried. And there's trace amounts of carbs in meat, natural carbs, no sugars, none of that Franken nonsense. It's all as we were designed to consume.
Right.
There's no negative side effect, and I'm not going to try to recite Amy Berger's recent blog post, but for the love of all that's holy, folks, if you're worried about protein jacking your sugar up, go read this because it's not. That's a fallacy. That's nonsense.
I'll go ahead and post it in the description of the video.
I appreciate that very much because I need to go dig that link up. I read it off of Twitter off my phone.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I keep it in my favorites because, every time I'm in one of these Facebook groups and they say, oh, you're overeating protein, I'll go, bam. Because no, you're not.
Well, I always come back with, hey, my blood pressure is 90/60. My heart rate, standing heart rate is 50 beats a minute. Tell me how I'm dying. Right. The vegans are, I hope you enjoy going to the emergency room over your clogged arteries. What a thing to say to somebody.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, I've been told I don't like cancer. Yeah, I know.
And well, if you're a vegan and you're watching, this is my shirt to you. You should have one.
You're not watching.
I know. Well, on the back of it, it says 100% carnivore.
Right. Yeah, I'm 1024th vegan.
Okay.
I think you could
run for federal office then. You could be a senator.
Yeah. So so Brett, tell me about what is your typical meal, or how many meals a day? What do you eat during those meals?
Okay, I recently cut down my eating from 4 times a day to 3, because I just kind of felt like it was time.
Yeah.
We're supposed to eat when we're hungry, only when we're hungry, and I thought, well, I'll try not to do it for a couple of evenings, see how it goes, because I really wasn't feeling hungry, and I was still eating. Like my evening snack was more bacon. Greatest snack in the world, by the way. So now I just eat 3 times a day, and every day I eat 28 ounces of ground beef, 90-10 protein to fat. I discovered about a month ago that that is the most satisfying meat I can eat right now. It like I figure my guess is because it's the high protein. We know that protein facilitates healing and muscle growth, and fat provides energy. So the bacon, I always have. Well, I've cut my bacon back. I was eating 10 slices of bacon with every meal, but now I've cut that back to about 6 or 7.
Okay.
And I have a about 12 ounces of bone broth every day, the hour before bedtime. My wife Danielle makes homemade bone broth. I can't recommend that enough, especially if you're a new carnivore and you're going through adaptation and you've got anxiety issues. Homemade bone broth is your friend. It's very soothing. It's very calming. It's literally the true. Remember the commercials? Nature's medicine. And then you check the ingredients on the box, and nature didn't have anything to do with it, but a laboratory.
Nature's MSG. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so some fructose. Yes, gotta have some fructose.
High fructose corn syrup. That's right.
Yeah, exactly, because that's natural.
Does your wife have a recipe?
For what?
For her bone broth?
She does. She has it. She's going to publish it on her blog. Matter of fact, she's just started to work this weekend on the website that she and I are both going to share, because her story is very powerful in its own right. And so she's going to talk about her experience with carnivory on her side of it. And then I'm going to talk about my experience, which is very different and mood related.
Right.
And then I'm going to give people a chance they wanted to talk to me because I was.
Well, I should interview her too then, you know.
Well, I would love for you to interview her, but she's not as, she doesn't have 20-some years of music performance experience under her belt, and she's not as gregarious and outgoing as I am. So that's why I said, tell the story that fits your skill set best.
Right.
She's going to be better at that by writing, but I'm going to try really hard. She's in the other room. We don't want her to hear that. I'm going to try really hard to get her into an interview someday.
Right. And, it doesn't have to, it could be a 5-minute interview, right?
It doesn't have to be a long.
That's the point, is just getting comfortable talking to people, because it's just a discussion, right?
Because her experiences with carnivory have been very different to me, because she had a lot of food allergies going in. And as you pull back the toxins away from your body, then the tolerances you had for those toxins dissipates.
Right.
So when something is introduced into your diet then that causes inflammation or whatnot, it doesn't cause a little bit. Oh my gosh, it's very amplified, according to her. I've not experienced this. I've been so careful, and to me, it's just not. I was depressed for over 40 years of my life. There is no mouth pleasure in life worth risking that.
I hear you. Inflammation the same way, right? I'm exactly the same way. Anytime somebody wants to talk about cheat days, whatever, I'm like, no, I don't miss my inflammation. I don't miss being in pain. I don't miss being bedridden. So no.
That's one thing about the meetup that dawned on me. It was kind of an epiphany. Somebody asked me if I had an epiphany recently, and I answered them very poorly. The answer I should have given was this: inflamed people are harder to get along with than people who are not inflamed.
Right.
I sat at a table for the first time knowingly in my life with 9 other human beings who did not suffer from inflammation. And the difference was remarkable. Because basically we were mostly strangers. We all had everybody was extremely friendly, extremely open. We talked about a variety of things. It wasn't just meat.
Sure.
But it was one of the most pleasant experiences that I've had with a group of complete strangers, just because in my mind, I believe it's because nobody's inflamed.
Right. Well, one of the weirdest things about this, right? We are all on diets, should say. I mean, ways of eating, and food is almost never talked about, right? Because it's not an issue. It's not the focus, right? It's actually the fact that you're not worried about food. And to your point, everybody's inflamed, everybody's focused on themselves, right? Because you're in pain, you're inflamed. Once you take that away, now you have the ability to reflect on others. And I think that is the difference for sure. I'm definitely a lot more outgoing and more responsive to people than I ever have been.
That's beautifully put.
Mm-hmm.
I may have to steal that.
It's okay. I already forgot what I said, so it's all right. You can have it.
But it's just so amazing to me. And it's so, once you accept the fact that this really works, then so many other things seem to fall into place. Mm-hmm. Like, I couldn't understand for years why was I making bad financial decisions? Why were all of these other decisions bad? Why was I making bad choices? Why were things going wrong on top of the illnesses? It's because you can't function properly. Right. Brain fog. Oh my gosh. Let's talk about what we call non-scale victories. I don't know if y'all talk about that in the keto community. In the carnivore community, it's really a big thing because for us, somebody starts carnivore, one of the first things is recommended, stop weighing yourself.
Right.
Just stop weighing yourself. That just causes anxiety. This is not a weight loss diet, though you might lose. It's not a weight loss way of eating, but you might lose weight.
Yeah.
It's to regain your health.
It's a happy side effect. Yes, for sure.
Oh yeah. It's, gosh, people are, I lost 40, 60, 70. It's beautiful. I love those stories. Mm-hmm. But the healthiness, here's the list of the things that I've lost in addition to depression, mental illness, and hypothyroidism. Dry and cracked skin in multiple places. Mm-hmm. Skin tags. Yep. I mentioned the joint pain. I used to have horrible lower back pain to where even walking around was a problem. Mm-hmm. Well, now I only have back pain if I stand in one place for too long. Right. I can walk for miles. My back not bother me at all. I lost hemorrhoids. Who knew that would happen? Who knew that they would ever go away? And I wasn't aware of it until I got to thinking. I was reading somebody asking a question about, did they have any problems? Because if you have that issue, certain dietary changes can cause you some major malfunctions. Mm. And it dawned on me, I haven't felt anything. And then I did some self-examination. It's gone. My mom suffered from them for years. She still has problems with them. She could change it with her diet.
Right.
If you suffer from this unpleasant thing to discuss, you can get rid of it just by changing your diet.
Yeah, instead of buying a cream that probably keeps it coming back.
I don't know if it keeps it coming back, but it never really seemed like it was helping very much when I would use that stuff. Let's see, what else have I lost? Skin, That's enough in and of itself, but it seems like I'm missing out something. Right. Something, it'll come to me later. But I mean, these non-scale victories are huge, and they just keep coming. The sleep thing is just a gigantic thing, because if you're not sleeping well, then your body's not detoxing properly. If your body doesn't detox properly, then it doesn't properly process nutrition, which makes it more difficult to sleep the next night. And you're stuck in this crazy cycle of illness.
The choir's here listening to you. Yes.
But
I know this. Yes. I went through it for years.
I mean, I weigh, my weight now, it's climbed because of resistance training, and I'm building muscle back. My weight's all skyrocketed to 179. When I graduated from high school, I wore 32-inch jeans and I weighed 175. Nice. I today wear 32-inch jeans and I weigh 179 as of this morning. And I feel better than I did when I graduated from high school.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I can work an 8-hour shift, come home, sit in my little chair for about 30 minutes, and I can go for another 6 hours of activities, whatever they might be, strenuous or not, and not blink an eye, and not feel any fatigue. There's no afternoon crash.
Right.
There's no mid-morning crash. I just do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. and go about my day. I don't think about food. There's no, hey, there's some bacon in there, just waiting for me to fix it. Or I wonder what the such and such tastes like. No,
right.
There's none of that.
No, in my case, I know if I'm not hungry, actually food repulses me. So, and that's definitely a huge change, right?
Well, in my job, I work at a big box store, grocery store, and I give out samples of things. So I have to give out samples. Like yesterday, I gave out cereal, Frosted Flakes, and
Were you apologizing to everybody? Sorry about this. I'm really sorry.
No, I've learned to keep my mouth shut. I literally have to because the hard part is watching the parents with their kids with the sippy cups full of that awful juice that's nothing but sugar, or to see them push a cart and have 4 kids with them pushing a cart full of sugar, cereal, fruit juice, candy, and the kids are all munching on a candy bar or crackers or something that is just horrible. It's unhealthy as all get out. Right. Those are the hardest times when I have to literally put hands over mouth. But smelling sugar right now is just the most horrible,
right,
nasty smell to me. And I have to work in it. So it's a challenge.
It's like, good tasting bleach. It's like, no.
That's exactly. I use that analogy all the time. Gentleman, Michael Anthony, he's out of Brooklyn, or he's in the east side of New York. He's a carnivore, been a carnivore for a few years now. He had me on his show. It's Epiphanitis. You can just find him at Michael Anthony on YouTube.
Okay.
But I mentioned to him, I said, this slave to taste and whatnot, bleach is poison. I know bleach is poison. A rational person does not drink bleach. Right. But imagine, for instance, if they made it delicious. Would you drink it? Well, logically, no, it's still poison. It's bleach. I'm not going to drink bleach. That'll kill me.
Right.
But you start getting pounded with that message, but it's sweetened. It's, it's vanilla cream flavored bleach.
And it's part of a complete breakfast.
And small dose, and then you start hearing story. Well, Bill down the street drank a little and he's all right.
Moderation.
It works on, the whole moderation, balance. We can convince you that, this is balanced. If we just pound it into your skull every day, you'll start believing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, no rational person puts poison in their mouth, but we see our friends and our family and our neighbors do it every day.
Yeah.
They do it with their Snickers bar, with their white bread made from those grains that just do horrible things to the human body.
Yeah.
Day in and day out. And this lady that I mentioned earlier said that what I was doing was so extreme. She saw pictures of my wife making her own homemade sausage so that she could not worry about bad ingredients.
Mm-hmm. And
the friend said, I just want to bring you all a plate of pasta.
No.
Please don't. Come see us. Bring us a plate of meat. We'll eat it. We'll share it with you.
And again, that's another one of my favorite comebacks is like, if you really want me to go eat a box of Pop-Tarts, would that make you feel better? Because no, I mean, that's just, to me, it just seems so irrational now to even think about eating that kind of food that, you're so worried about not having Rice Krispies or whatever. I mean, are you going to die by not eating that? No.
Well, and then there's the fallacy about your digestive tract and going to the bathroom and all that stuff. Do I look like a constipated man? I'm serious. I mean, constipated people are their affect isn't happy. They're not smiling and they're not full of energy. They kind of look kind of quiet and they're embarrassed and they don't want anybody to know, and you can see it in their face.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the bathroom like everybody else does. There's no digestive problems. There's no meat rotting in my colon.
Because it never gets there.
It never does.
Right. All right. Well, hey, you know what? It's getting kind of late, and figure we'll maybe wrap it up here pretty soon. But
that's all right. I appreciate the opportunity to converse and discuss these things. And
is there anything else you wanted to discuss? Maybe any of your music world or anything like that coming up? You got any?
Well, music right now. I'm in the middle of working on the second Dark Hearts Blues album with my friend Kimmy that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. I just released a solo album last year. It's called The Last Sadness. Mm-hmm. It doesn't tie into food, but it ties into the health journey somewhat.
This is alternative rock, right? Is it?
It's not. I would. Yeah. It's kind of progressive. To me, rock and roll is rock and roll. Yeah. People put labels on rock and roll.
Well, hey, I'm not a country guy, so you know.
Well, it's kind of progressive rock. Think Pink Floyd, but maybe a little stranger, perhaps. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But you can find me at thankful.carnivore on Instagram, and on Twitter you can find me at Stickman That's StickmanBleedin. Don't add a G.
I'll link to it in the description.
Don't add a G. Twitter doesn't allow that many characters.
Is there a story behind that, by the way?
I was originally given the nickname Stickman. I'm a guitar player. I'm not a drummer.
Right.
Over a piece of music, one of the first pieces of music that I was ever a part of that got published and released on an album for sale. And people gave me that nickname. That became my stage name. And then I started writing and releasing music on the internet. And nobody was buying it because my mental illness kept me from hearing well when it came to recording. I could perform, but I couldn't mix. I could write, but I couldn't mix. If you can't mix, then nothing sounds good. And I was doing it all by myself. And something else, when you're mentally ill, you're not receptive to advice or suggestions, or I wasn't.
Right.
Because I thought I knew it all. And if I thought I was right, I would argue with you till the sky fell. Didn't matter. So this last album and the music I'm doing now with Kimmy is really a lot better because all that's gone. I can hear accurately. I know what I'm doing now and can do it pretty well. Mm-hmm. So it's allowed me to release a more professional quality product. Right now, though, due to the health change, my musical well has been dried up. I wrote about sad stuff for so long. I don't want to do that anymore.
No.
So when the well is refilled, I figure it'll probably be in another 6 months to a year before my body is 80% healed to what it should be. I figure around that time will be when I start writing music again.
Yeah. So point your muse at the wrath at the medical industry.
That's something that I'm going to discuss at some point in time because it's really horrible how many people have to suffer needlessly for no good reason.
Yeah. So go put Dr. Ken Berry's "Lies My Doctor Told Me" to lyrics, and then you may have it.
That'd be an option. Although I'd have to probably get his permission for it. I enjoy his energy is just intense. Mm-hmm. He's relentless. I admire what he's doing so much because he's literally a doctor who'll tell you, I got sick and tired of seeing my people coming in not getting better.
Right. Dr. Gary Fetke, another one, a surgeon who got tired of cutting people's limbs off.
Oh, same thing with Sean Baker. How he got into all the problems is because he started recommending dietary changes so that surgery became unnecessary. So right. He saved his patient expense and misery, but the powers that be, whose revenue stream got interrupted, got angry.
Right.
And that's why we see all this outside negativity towards these low-carb ways of living because of revenue stream interference. If we're well and not sick, pharmaceutical companies, well, people are lousy customers. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I really appreciate this opportunity to sit down and talk about this with you. And I look through a lot of your videos. I admire the work that you're doing, the message that you're trying to share, and the way you're going about trying to help people. I like you shop at Aldi's. I want to share with you. My wife will only eat ground beef from Aldi's. The 80-20 ground beef speaks to her.
All right.
Much in the way the Sam's 90-10 in the tube speaks to me.
My dogs eat the patties from Walmart, the 32 patty, 8 pounds of patties. They like that. All right. It's affordable for one thing. They eat a lot.
That's what counts.
That's right.
That's what with carnivory. The one thing I run into a lot is people saying, "I can't afford to eat like that." Yes, you can. I'm not eating $12 ribeyes 3 times a day. Who can afford that?
Well, the Walmart we have here sells a lot of lamb, right? And it's cheap, so we can get like a nice good lamb chop for like $4.
Wow,
and it's great, right? I mean, I like it as well, if not better than a ribeye. So that's the way. You don't have to spend a lot on this.
We haven't seen lamb that affordable up here yet, but if we do, I'm gonna, because I haven't had lamb before. I want to try it just to see whether I like it or not at some point in time.
It's very flavorful. It's very good.
But honestly, the meat I'm eating right now is all I crave. It's so satisfying. And something else with carnivore, you do become better able to listen to your body.
Right.
When since I've gone back to lifting weights, I'm better. I can tell when I've reached fatigue. Any more is not good for me. Stop here.
Right.
Whereas before it was, okay, I'm going to do these number of stations. I'm going to do this many reps, and then we'll go home regardless.
Right. And you have diminishing returns as a result.
And well, I also, I had a hernia a few years ago. I had to have repaired. I really don't want to go through that again.
Right.
So because there's no toxins, there's nothing to get in the way between my body signals and my ability to perceive them.
Right.
That's magic.
It's good stuff. Yeah, it's definitely true. All right, Brett. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up, bud. And I really appreciate your time. And you've already given them places they can find you. That's great. I know you're on Twitter, Stickman Bleeding. We run across each other occasionally.
Once or twice a day.
Yeah, and and there's 2 of me, and we won't talk about the other me. So
I have laughed so hard at some of that, just because we're talking about serious life and death stuff, and you bringing levity into those discussions is greatly appreciated.
Well, it's all about sounding for real too. That's the sad part, is I have a lot of vegans following me on that account.
I have a lot of vegans following me, and I don't mind them following me. But I'm
no,
not going to argue with them.
Serious. That's the problem.
I'm not going to argue with them. They can follow me. I'm under no obligation to follow them back.
No, but I'm talking about that other account. They think that account is serious.
Okay. They don't know that it's a joke.
Right.
Oh my gosh, the fun you could have.
Maybe they learn something. I don't know, but it's so over the top that the Poe concept, right? Poe's law is like, if you don't put like a smiley face or something that people may not realize it's
satire. Yeah, okay. I understand.
I purposely don't do that, because if I made it apparent that it's satire, then it wouldn't be as funny. So
the ones that really crack me up is the folks who are low carb people who stumble across it and think you're being serious.
See, and that's why it's so beautiful. I troll them back a little bit.
I am howling here. I mean, every time I put a laughing face on it, it's because I am howling. It is so funny, some of the stuff you have posted to that. And when the Eat Lancet came out, oh my gosh.
What was a gift? It was a gift to us.
Oh.
I mean, that's exactly why I started that out, was like, okay, well, let's say what they really are thinking that they're afraid to say. And that's what makes it so funny, because and then they go and they don't disagree. Like, well, yeah, we don't really want to live.
It'll be the only time in my life that I ever get tickled about somebody saying, and yes, we're trying to depopulate the planet. We're just not being secret about it anymore.
That's right.
Something to that effect.
Over and over again, I say that about 15 different ways, but yes, it's all the same. So, all right,
Brett. I appreciate this so much. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Good luck with what you're doing. Please keep doing. You're doing good work, putting goodness out in the world the way you are.
We appreciate it.
Hats off to you, and happy days ahead.
You too, man. All right. You take care, and we will chat again sometime, I'm sure.
All right. Thanks so much. Y'all have a great night. Bye-bye.